Peter, and I'm here with my co-host Leigh.
Hello.
And today, we're talking about the Great Fire of London.
Ugh. Doesn't sound great.
It is, I'll tell you what, it's a disaster.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so it fits nicely into the theme of the show.
I might have known.
Yeah. So, we're going all the way back to London in 1665. It's the time of King Charles II.
That's right.
So it was, and I'm going to sugarcoat a little bit here.
Okay.
London was a filthy, overcrowded medieval town with narrow streets, densely packed with overhanging houses,
Great.
made entirely out of wood. So you know how last time we had that visual aid when we were talking about New York, and we had like the Empire State Building built out of Lego and stuff?
Yeah.
I brought a visual aid today.
Okay. Now we've got here
Yeah, it's a filthy box of matches.
filthy box of matches.
Yeah, that's basically
The pipe on it.
yeah. Those are actually safety matches, which would have helped maybe. This is just picture a filthy box of matches, and you've
Okay.
got London in 1665.
Okay. Setting the scene.
Yeah, so basically, there are building codes that were established in the 12th century,
Okay.
and they specified that party walls between houses. So these are like when you build a house and you have like a semi-detached, or even when you have houses that are closely built together.
Yeah.
The houses, the line or the walls between houses are called party walls.
Sure.
So in these 12th century building codes, they said that those need to be built out of stone or brick,
Right.
which didn't happen. So I'm not sure like what kind of bureaucracy we're
Sounds
looking
like a
at.
good idea.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny. It was kind of funny to me. 12th century, so like 1100, the 1100s.
Right.
It's funny that like we think about building codes now in Ottawa, in modern Ottawa. Like, yeah, of course you have building codes,
Of course.
but this is like, 800 years, 900 years ago, also had building codes. So
It wasn't just slapping up boards and
no, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
There
So
were
that
some checks and balances in place.
exactly. So
Good to
I
know.
found that kind of funny. But yeah, so they had these building codes. But I figure this is still a time when, there's a lot of like, these is more or less medieval times. Maybe not, I'm probably using the wrong term there and someone would call me on it. But I think you're more concerned with raising your 7 kids than you are with what's dividing your house from your neighbor.
Yeah.
Right?
7 kids and hopefully 3 of them live.
Yeah, exactly. We're still in this era.
We're still in this
in
era of
filthy, disgusting London
Yeah.
with your house of 7 kids.
Yeah.
So King Charles II, he's going to come up a few times, but King Charles II, he's like taking a look at the situation, and he's like, "Hey, you guys didn't ignore those building codes and just build an entire city out of wood, right?" And people were like,
Nah, governor.
who would do that?"
Yeah.
And
Of course, we built the house out of wood and then lugged stone every single time to make the party walls. Of course, we did that.
yeah, obviously.
Hard work and we love it.
No, exactly.
We love it.
Yeah. And after that, I went home and I raised my 7 kids. So it actually got to a point where the king wrote a letter to the mayor of London complaining about the fire hazards.
Okay.
And the city governors they responded, but they were basically like, yeah, we'll get on that. We're on it.
The bureaucracy is already
Basically.
well in place.
Yeah. So that was London 1665. We're going to jump ahead a little bit to Sunday, September 2nd, 1666.
Okay.
And I just want to take a moment to pause and acknowledge that we're talking about a year that's got 666 in it,
dear.
which is
And deals with fire.
pretty metal.
It's pretty metal.
There's some stuff that happens later on that like, yeah, 666. Not to anyway. So I love this part too. The disaster started in one of the meanest, nastiest, narrowest streets of London, Pudding Lane.
Aw.
I know,
Sounds
right?
sweet.
I know. I read that. And I was like, "Aw."
Should we do this whole thing in Cockney accent? No, we shouldn't.
Mine
That'll
would be
get
awful.
real terrible.
Dicey. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got my brother-in-law's English, and I feel like he'd beat me up.
Oh,
He's also very fit.
okay.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Let's not do that.
Let's not.
Sorry, Steve. Anyway, so Pudding Lane led down to the Thames near London Bridge, and that'll be important later. But it's basically, if you look at a map, you've got
Is
like
it the Thames? I hate
Thames.
to correct people.
Is it Thames?
Isn't
it's
it?
probably going to be Thames.
It's the Thames.
That's probably right.
I've seen an episode or 2 of Doctor Who in my time.
Okay, well, my bad.
Sorry.
So anyway, so it leads down to the Thames. Thank you.
Lovely.
And so if you look at a map, you've got the Thames that kind of cuts through London, and we're about like 2-3 blocks away from where that is.
Okay.
Like we're near where the London Bridge is. Pudding Lane's right up here.
Pudding Lane.
Pudding Lane, the meanest, nastiest place in London.
Blimey.
So among all the houses that were like tightly packed
Okay.
was essentially a pile of kindling that was the baker's house. And this was the
Oh.
king's baker.
Okay.
His name was Thomas Fainer.
Hmm.
So he later testified that he extinguished the fire in his oven. So obviously he had an oven in his house because this is where he does all his baking.
Sure.
So he testified that he extinguished the fire at around 10 o'clock on September 1st.
Okay.
And that there's no way an ember could have ignited a pile of kindling nearby.
Impossible.
No, of course not.
Unthinkable.
Like how could... Yeah, come on. You think that this thing that's designed to burn is going to light this pile of things designed to start the thing that burns on fire? Come on.
Come on.
Nah, couldn't have been me. Anyway, which I guess I
His
get.
word is as good as anything. So
Exactly.
We'll just
And-
take him at that.
I also, while we're on the topic of culpability, I also found it funny that it is like the king's baker, and just have this image of the king's butcher and the king's candlestick maker standing there being like, "Look at us."
Cocking his head to the right. Like, I was just going.
So Fainer's assistant woke up at 2 a.m. on Sunday to find the house full of smoke and the bakery engulfed in flames.
Okay.
Not a good start. Everything made of wood.
Take care of that fire.
Yeah, yeah.
Good thing about those stone walls.
Yeah.
Or else
If it wasn't for those stone walls, this would
in
have
trouble.
gotten out of hand fast.
Okay.
So, so basically, like the bakery gets engulfed in flames, and the house is starting to go up. So most of the people actually make it out of the building by climbing out of the windows in the upstairs living quarters and jumping onto a neighbor's roof. So like when you're picturing tightly packed, like think of like you're really like stacked in the same way that the Athenians were ass to ankles
That's
in
what
Athens.
I thought of when you mentioned that.
Yeah.
First episode.
Basically, if you picture like if these houses were people, they'd be like shoulder to shoulder, like this, like
Just in their
"Can you
little
get away from
hutches."
me?" Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So they climb up to like an upper story, and they climb onto the neighbor's roof. Most of the people made it out,
Okay.
except for the maid, who was paralyzed by fear, and she stayed behind and died in the flames.
Oh dear.
Which is kind of interesting. I feel like we're already doing like a million callbacks, but this kind of like ties into what we were talking about last time about the bomber blitz in New York, where like sometimes you get into this situation that it's so foreign and so unexpected.
Yeah.
It's just like, this isn't happening.
Yeah,
Like-
and it's easy to sit and go, why? Just
Yeah.
run.
It's your life.
If you're
Get
surrounded
out of
by
there.
fire and the heat and the smoke.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just overwhelming.
Exactly. And the other thing that it got me thinking about was the like how your mind can sometimes be like not tricked, but like you get into a situation where I could totally see being like, I'm not the biggest fan of spiders. I'm not like terrified of them,
Right.
but I can do without spiders.
Uh-huh.
But you know, like you get into a situation where I can get into a mind frame where I'm standing in a window of a burning house and there's like a tarantula there and being like, I don't know.
Ooh.
So if like this maid is afraid of heights, say,
That would be my thing.
which is, yeah, exactly. So like I could see that kind of like mental switch going off, which is like, I'm really afraid of heights.
Right. And
So,
maybe not everyone's fit like
yeah.
is gonna jump across a building and do a tuck and roll.
No, exactly. No, exactly.
Most of us
exactly.
be like, I'm not making that jump.
Yeah.
I'll burn to death.
Which it's exactly, which is I kind of find funny. I think the expression is like throwing the baby out with the bathwater in terms of like your mind is just like, I'm afraid of heights, so I guess
Right.
I'll just stay here and die.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just one of those
It's
interesting
one of
things
two.
that I thought of.
One of two death options.
Yeah. So anyway, that was that was interesting, I thought. So basically, it starts off as a slow burn.
Right.
The bakery burns for a long time. Like it's kind of like starts off smoldering. I guess maybe this is how all fires start, but like it smolders, gets a little bit bigger over time. Long and slow. Took about an hour before the flames spread to the neighboring building.
Okay.
No stone party walls. So
Oh, they didn't do the stone party.
They did not. Did not listen to King Charles II.
No, they were lying.
So, and eventually, so now like the flames are starting to touch the neighboring houses, and eventually a gust of wind blows sparks from the fire onto a nearby inn and ignites it. So now we've got 3 buildings on fire.
Okay.
But like it sounds kind of concerning, but it's still pretty much standard fare in filthy, disgusting nightmare London.
Sure.
Like fires happen because I don't know, like we don't have
Just people and
exactly. I'm not sure what state their plumbing is in necessarily, and like you know, you don't necessarily you certainly don't have fire hydrants on every corner, right?
No.
So if a fire starts in your kitchen, then you're probably going to be rebuilding your house, kind of thing.
no, not throwing baking soda on it.
No,
I guess.
no,
I haven't figured that one out yet.
no.
So how are they? I guess you're probably going to get into this.
How they fight the fire?
How are they set to fight the fire?
Well, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
And this time we will get there.
All right.
I've noticed the last two times I've said we'll get there and we never get there.
Aw.
This time we're getting there. So the mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, he was dragged out of bed at 3 a.m.
Good name.
to see what, yeah. Well, there's a few good names. So he was dragged out of bed at 3 a.m. to see what was going on.
Okay.
And he basically, again, because this is like standard fare for, kindling London,
Yeah.
takes a look, shrugs, and goes back to bed. And he's like, he's
Not
basically
my
like,
job.
just put it out. Can you just put it out?
Can you get whoever it is and tell them?
Yeah, whatever we do in this situation, just do that. Yeah. So that's basically him.
All right.
So now we get introduced to a guy named Samuel Pepys.
Okay.
He's a diarist, and he'll actually come back in a future episode too. There's a cool connection here.
Okay.
He's kind of our. And I was corrected on this. You know how I was kept calling him Thucydides?
Oh, yes.
Thucydides.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So sorry.
Sorry.
Hopefully you can still find his book.
Historians were screaming at their devices when you kept saying that.
How could you?
Not pronounce that way.
Immediately lost everyone. Anyway, Thucydides. Not talking about him right now though. Samuel Pepys. So he's a diarist. They just said diarist. I guess this was a thing.
Historian?
Maybe is like a historian.
Okay.
They called him a diarist, but I would say historian. He also does a bunch of stuff, so he's kind of a badass too.
Okay. Not
but
just
he's the
a
main
sayer,
reason.
but a doer.
Exactly. So he's like a main. Yeah. If you subscribe to the theory of not getting involved with your subject matter, he did not do that. He got involved hard.
I can't. I got to stay out of this.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
I'm keeping track of everything. I can't influence the events.
So he was shaken awake by his maid telling him that there was a fire. And he kind of did the same thing. Like he looked out the window, saw smoke, concluded that it was far enough away, and went back to sleep. He looks out the window, was like, "Oh yeah, there's a fire."
I mean, to be fair, that's what I do.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
There's a fire. Someone will take care of it.
yeah,
I'm a diarist.
yeah.
I'll write about it tomorrow.
I'll get the full story.
Yeah.
But that comes up again too, is the power of inertia. Like you'll see, like as things get worse and worse, like, and we'll talk about it some more. But yeah, exactly. Like you see it, and you're like, not my problem right now.
Right.
Going back to sleep.
Right.
So yeah, so the attitude of Pepys and Bloodworth, the mayor, they weren't, again, like I said, they weren't completely unfounded. Fires weren't really that rare in 1660s London.
Old hat.
But what they didn't know, either of them, was the location of the fire. So Pudding Lane was near Thames Street. I said it again.
We're gonna get
Pudding
that
Lane was near Thames Street, which was about a block north.
Okay.
Like the street was. Pudding Lane is about a block north from Thames Street.
Okay.
And Thames Street was like riddled with buildings filled with highly flammable goods.
Oh, great.
And the book didn't specify what these highly flammable goods are, but I would picture like kindling stores.
Sure.
Essentially.
Okay.
Like maybe, I don't know, bookstores, anything that's going to burn.
Yeah. Here's
Like,
some crap to start your cook fire.
Exactly. And so this is happening like a block away. So people should be more worried, but they're not.
Oh, dear.
And yeah, so, and like I said, we'll talk about Pepys more, but here's kind of the source of most of what we know about the fire.
Okay.
So now, London's lighting up. So the fire hits Thames Street, and it spreads like plague.
Yeah, I feel like there's a catchier, more well-known saying to get across what you're trying
yeah.
to do. Well, we'll come back to that.
The fire spreads rapidly. I don't know. We'll look it up.
That's good.
Yeah, okay. So the local firefighters tried to put it out with the best tools they had, and here's answering your question. Leather buckets and handheld pumps.
Well.
That is the extent of their tools.
Leather buckets.
Yeah. So
Dipping into the Thames?
I guess. Yeah.
And sort of doing a hand bombing situation? Or?
Kind of. Like imagine Like I
I'm
can't.
sorry. That's just so sad.
I know. I can't like imagine. I can't imagine like I've had trouble putting out a campfire with a bucket of water that wasn't made out of leather. I can't imagine these leather buckets were particularly watertight either.
Yeah, but you look fancy while you're doing it.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah, maybe these are Gucci buckets.
Maybe.
But they did what they could. But they did about as much good as leather buckets and handheld pumps would do.
And handheld pumps with a bit of a length of hose, I'm assuming.
I'm assuming, but
Okay.
like not fire trucks.
No.
This is not
even a tank full of water on wheels.
No.
I'm
No, we got nothing.
picturing. Okay.
So by 8 a.m., about 6 hours after the fire started in the King's Baker's building, the Church of St. Magnus was ablaze.
Oh, boy.
And this is about 2 blocks south from where the fire started. So
Okay.
now, like, Thames was about a block. Now we're about 2 blocks away.
Okay.
And now the fire is, like, right at the London Bridge.
Okay.
So Pepys wakes up again. He's like, hey, what's new with the fire?
Take care of that fire yet?
Yeah, is it out yet? And his maid's like, over 300 houses have burned down.
300?
Yeah,
you
300.
say?
300. That's
That's a situation.
Yeah, and then also all of Fish Street is on fire, which is about a block east of the bakery.
Fish
Fish Street.
Just off Pudding Lane.
Yep. You know.
At least you know what you're getting on these streets.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why mince words?
So now we're the fire's spread 2 blocks south and about a block east.
Okay.
So picture a
it's-
block in your mind, and even though blocks are tighter in London, like it's getting
I mean, a city block,
yeah,
tight or spread out, it's considerable.
exactly.
All right.
So Pepys rushes to the Tower of London to have a look, which is to the west of where this is all happening. So he just wants a higher vantage point.
Okay.
Yeah, he sees roughly 4 blocks of 17th century London on fire,
Oh my God.
and the flames approaching London Bridge.
Okay.
And his immediate concern was for the double row of houses built on that bridge.
Oh, there's houses on the bridge.
Right? Which triggers our first sidebar. That was exactly my thoughts.
It was good that I.
Yeah. No,
just
but
let that go by.
No. I
Yeah,
set that
houses
up
on a
because I was
bridge.
reading it, and the book doesn't go further beyond saying his concern was for the 2 rows of houses, but I'm like, I've seen London Bridge. There's no houses on London Bridge.
I've never even seen London Bridge. I just was picturing a bridge, and
Right.
you know what I would normally picture a bridge being houseless,
Right. Yeah, well, your typical houseless
devoid of
bridge.
houses and domiciles and such.
So I bet along those same lines, I bet you thought that there's only one London Bridge. Turns out there have been 3. So there was modern London Bridge,
I know
which
there's
was
a song about it.
right.
It involves the London Bridge falling down.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that probably happened as a result of one of these 3 bridges. Because the modern bridge was opened in 1973.
Okay.
The new, quote unquote, London Bridge was opened between 1831 and 1967. And then the old London Bridge we're talking about right now was built in 1209.
Okay.
So there's been 3 versions of the same bridge, basically.
Okay.
So Old London Bridge, construction began in 1176 and it finished in 1209.
Okay.
I'm just going to give you another little callback. Just as a reminder, the Empire State Building, 102 floors,
Yeah.
built in 13 months, 4.5 floors a week, which is about 29 meters per month. I did the math for you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Because Old London Bridge was 270 meters, built in 33 years, which is about 8 meters per year or 0.7 meters a month.
See, it's
They should have just waited 800 years and got the same crew to build
exactly
it. Right?
Have some foresight for crying out loud.
There's a nice little parallel there, I thought. It's kind of interesting. So King Henry II commissioned the original London Bridge following the murder of his once friend, once foe, Thomas Becket.
Oh.
And when I read that, because that was another like offhanded, in the this is a sidebar, so it was my own research. But I was reading it, and it said the murder of his when do murders trigger the building of bridges?
Yeah.
So Thomas Becket was the Archbishop of Canterbury, murdered in 1170. This is almost like a sidebar in a sidebar.
Yeah. We're going
Anyway.
deep.
This is okay. So what happened was
Yes.
Becket excommunicated 3 church officials for circumventing his coronation authority. So he had sole authority of coronating someone. I'm assuming this is like not like a king necessarily, but like lower lords and stuff.
Right.
So other priests were doing it. And he was like, that's my job.
Yeah,
so he
yeah.
started excommunicating them. And then he went excommunication crazy. Like he just started excommunicating anyone who was opposed to him in the church.
Oh, they're touchy about that stuff.
Basically, yeah. So King Henry II heard about what Becket was doing and apparently said something that was misinterpreted by those that heard it as a desire to have him killed. So apparently he said, will no one rid me of this turbulent priest? That's what he said. So, yeah.
You heard him?
Well, so there were 4 nights that go full Cousin Eddie on him. Have you seen Christmas Vacation? You remember when like Chevy Chase is like bitching about his boss and then his cousin Eddie.
Good one. Yeah, I got you.
So in this situation, didn't exactly bring back Bill Murray's brother with a bow on. They went a different way.
Okay.
So they went to confront Becket at his monastery. And upon seeing the knights, Becket says, I'm no traitor and I'm ready to die. So it's like, oh, okay. Well, I guess he knows what's happening.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
So they try to pull him outside, but he clings to a pillar and he's like not going anywhere.
Not as ready to go as he said.
So, and this is where it takes a turn, they start hacking at him, like aiming for the head.
All right.
So they hit him twice until the third one lops off the top of his head, and I've got a quote here, in such a way that the blood white with the brain and the brain no less red from the blood dyed the floor of the cathedral. So I'm just going to translate that into modern English. They cut his head open and spilled his brains on the floor.
Neat.
So come back to King Henry II. And King Henry's like, have you guys ever heard of a figure of speech? Like, what the?
Like, we don't have that yet.
we didn't. That comes later.
That's
like Shakespeare's not for a few years.
Bill Shakespeare will make that a lot more clear.
So anyway, he gets a chapel in the center of the bridge. So they build a chapel to Becket as a martyr in the center of the bridge. And Becket gets canonized in 1173 as St. Thomas of Canterbury.
Oh.
So it worked out for him, you know?
Yeah. In the long run.
Yeah, I feel like.
Aside from a partial decapitation.
So, the overeager knights did not do him any favors.
I still love that.
So, yeah, I know, right? Like... Careful what you say around eager 13th century
eager
knights.
To please, eager to honor the... Yeah.
Jeez, I could really do without this priest. Say no more. Guys, I feel like I should say some more here as they're like leaving.
No, we got this.
No, we got you. So anyway, London Bridge, it was exorbitantly expensive to build. And that's why it was partially financed after the fact by selling plots of land on the bridge where people could build houses.
Okay.
But then eventually the bridge became a bigger and bigger money sink over time, and then it was replaced in 1831 with the new London Bridge.
The new London Bridge.
But yeah, that's the story of the old London Bridge and why there are buildings on it, and why there's a chapel to Thomas Becket /
Aha.
Yeah. So slash pun not intended.
I wasn't. Okay.
So
good sidebar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the first one. So London Bridge is burning down at this point. Pepys, well, not quite, but it's getting there. So Pepys's main concern, if you remember Pepys, our diarist, his main concern is for all of the people living on the bridge, and many of the houses were actually destroyed. So like the fires get into the bridge and starting to burn these houses.
Okay. We're assuming that it's spreading at a slow enough rate that these people are evacuating their houses.
Yeah, like it's not. It's not like a.
Unless they're like sleeping, which it could. I mean, it was the middle of the night.
Yeah. Well, there is actually. I forgot to mention this at the top, but we're going to get to a shocking death toll.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll get to that at the end. But you're right. Like it's not a fire like this doesn't. It's not like a tidal wave. It's not a tsunami.
Right. It's sort of
foreshadowing. It's not a tsunami. Not for this. I don't want to get you distracted about this, but.
Well,
in the future,
I'm sure we'll cover something,
but
tsunami-esque.
It is relatively so. Like we said, I think fire started at 2 a.m. and then like there was those 300 houses that burnt down were like by 8 a.m. So it's not slow, but it's not like between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. all of London burned down.
Right.
Yeah. So slower than a tidal wave, faster than a snail. Not a disaster, but anyway.
Murderous snail.
Yeah. So there was a bigger concern though. So like the bridge seems to be catching on fire, but what the fire has also destroyed are giant wooden water wheels attached to the bridge that supplied much of the city with water.
Okay.
Like big water wheels
like
that were on the bridge
sure.
that would basically pump. So I guess there was a rudimentary water supply in the city.
Okay.
So it's kind of like if you wanted to, if this was like an attack with fire, you would want to target these water wheels first.
Right.
So that now you don't have water.
So
So the fire starts and it immediately cuts off water from, like it cuts off the city from the one thing that could help it. Immediately. So Pepys, a man of action, jumps in his boat and rows up the Thames to get a closer look.
Okay.
So
I'm
he's
just
like,
picturing him writing himself into his thing. And the brave diarist, without a moment's thought.
Yeah, right. He doesn't tell you about like his assistant who's like, shouldn't you go check that out?
In the morning.
You go check it out.
Yeah, you.
So all along the Thames, and this is actually a quote from him, everyone was endeavoring to remove their goods and fling them into the river or bring them onto barges to like push away from the shore.
Okay.
So they're just trying to save their stuff, basically.
Right.
And this comes back to what we were saying about that like paralysis and your like mind doing this like mental arithmetic, like, can I make it? Because he says people were basically waiting until the very last second to abandon their homes.
Of course.
Like there's this giant fire. Everything around me is on fire, but maybe I'll be okay.
Maybe they'll fix it before my house gets burned down.
Exactly.
So we'll wait.
So anyway, so it's like that whole thing that we've been talking about since last time, like the deny. Exactly. I think I probably would too.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know. My wife is pretty reasonable. She might drag us out of the house.
Mine too.
Yeah.
We'd be in a different province before it got done.
Did we just unlock a key of evolution? I think we might have.
I think so.
Yeah. Survival of the fittest, significant other.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so that's just speaking to like the theme of like denial and how humans process disaster. That comes up over and over in this disaster, in other ones that we've seen, and in future ones. Like you don't
realize it's a disaster until history tells you it was a disaster.
That's a great way of putting it.
In the moment, just some shit that's happening, and
that's an amazing way of putting it. Exactly. That's exactly it.
That's the thing. You got to take a huge giant step back and see all this stuff. That's what I was saying. I think in the first episode, it's fascinating to me. Yeah, to think of people in these situations. How are they processing it? And we're getting right into that, which is good. It's like you're processing it as I'll wait till the last possible second and then I'll leave my house because this is
exactly
not a big deal.
Exactly.
I'm sure they'll fix it.
So Pepys keeps rowing all the way to the royal palace at Whitehall. It's about 5 kilometers, by the way. He rows 5 kilometers to alert the king.
All right.
You remember the king who's like, hey, you guys stuck to those building codes, right? King is like, mother.
They told me. I'm the king.
So he authorizes Pepys to order the mayor to spare no houses. So basically he tells Pepys to go back, tell the mayor to like tear down houses to stop this fire. Because like if you get rid of, you know what I mean? Like if you get rid of the thing that the fire's burning, then you'll presumably stop it or at least slow it down.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, he's like, go tell the mayor to do that.
Which, okay.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
So many questions. Right. I know you have the answers, so I'll just let you talk.
We'll get. Yeah, I made a conscious effort to actually get there on all the places that I would say that I'll get there. So.
You just have "get there" written like intermittently down your screen.
Every time I write like a little teaser, I write "get there" in parentheses.
Right.
I don't. Anyway, so the roofs are on fire at this point. So Pepys delivers the king's order to the mayor, but the mayor's already been ordering houses to be torn down to make a fire break.
Right.
And fire break. That's what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you're trying to break the fire. So if there's a bunch of stuff that's burning, you just like clear a path.
The fuel.
Exactly. Like fire, unless there's a lot of wind, like there is.
Right. Coming off the water.
Yeah. Also, landlords were reluctant to allow their buildings to be torn down until it was certain they couldn't be saved. Right? On top of everything.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, but by then, obviously, it's way too late to stop the fire. But that's human nature too, right?
Of course.
Like you're a landlord. This is like your income property. Exactly. You're like, I hope this is how my kid goes to college.
Mine.
Exactly.
Don't touch it.
Yeah. But if we don't tear it down, then all of London's going to burn down. Not
care.
my problem. Well, I mean, it kind of is. But...
all of London is not mine. That's mine.
Exactly.
Don't touch it.
Yeah. Yeah. Human nature, man. So by the end of September 2nd, the streets are filled with people, horses, and carts laden with goods. They're running each other over, basically moving goods from one burned house to another one that hasn't been burnt yet. You're basically
Soon
like
to be burnt.
Yeah, you're like whack-a-moling your stuff wherever you can.
Nice.
Or I guess the fire's whack-a-moling the stuff.
Yeah.
So the Thames was full of barges packed with goods, and also belongings just floating in the river.
Nice.
Like people are just trying to save their shit again. So I've got Pepys here. That afternoon, all over the Thames, with one's face in the wind, you were almost burned with a shower of fire drops. And by nightfall, we saw the fire as only one entire arch of fire from this to the other side of the bridge, and in a bow up the hill for an arch of above a mile long. It made me weep to see. So basically just like this dome of fire, essentially. Yeah. And you're rowing down the river, and you're getting like hit in the face with like fire. Like, you know, if you stood close to a campfire.
Yeah.
That's constantly.
Good
stuff. Yeah. And here's another thing that we talked about with denial. So at this point, the rich start feeling the heat. Like this is still a pretty crappy area of like
Pudding
London.
Lane and such.
Yeah. So by Monday,
they're feeling the heat.
Yeah. So the fire started on, well, I guess Saturday night. Technically, Sunday is what we've been talking about. So now by Monday, 1/16 of the city was ablaze.
Okay.
Which doesn't seem like a lot, but we'll see how that goes. So the wind at this point turns the fire and it begins advancing to the wealthier residential neighborhoods. And now London's real concerned, right?
We can't have that.
Up until this point, it's like, oh, the commoners are burning. But now we start like burning whatever the equivalent of a mansion is in London. And people are like, whoa. Hey. Yeah. So the London Gazette ceased publishing after its Monday edition.
Okay.
Because fire, I guess.
Here's the news, fire.
And here's a nice little interesting analogy or like touching point with what we're talking about with Athens. Conspiracy theories start immediately about foreign arsonists.
Well, there's another bit of human nature there for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like this has got to be someone's fault.
Exactly.
And it's got to be our enemies.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So King Charles II.
Stupid, dumb baker.
No, exactly. Couldn't have been a guy who maybe wasn't super careful putting out his oven.
Right.
Yeah. No, it had to be foreign arsonists. That's what it was.
Foreigners. Oh, foreign? I thought you said four.
No, foreign
arsonists.
No.
Sure.
Exactly. So King Charles II fires the mayor, and he puts the Duke of York in charge, which makes things a little bit better.
Right. Figure it out.
Yeah. This guy's a duke. He knows what's up. So he sets up 7 firefighting posts around the perimeter of the fire. So, which kind of, again, makes sense. Like if the fire is like, you've got the fire around centered on Pudding Lane.
Yeah.
He just sets up like a perimeter.
Sure.
And they basically, each of these posts has 30-foot soldiers and 100 civilians.
Okay.
And like, these are just like helping to fight the fire, transport water or whatever. And thankfully, this worked.
Okay.
Nope.
No.
By midnight, the fire covered 4 times the area it covered only 24 hours earlier.
Oh, Duke.
And it got worse on Tuesday. So.
Another firing.
Well, we'll see.
In the future.
So Tuesday is even worse.
Okay.
Worse.
So
more of London burned on Tuesday than the previous 2 days combined.
So what he did...
It didn't make it worse.
Ineffectual?
Ineffectual.
Oh, okay.
Like he didn't
throw gasoline on it?
Try the gas.
No, try the kerosene.
Yeah. Is this the time to experiment? So no, he didn't like it helped, but at this point, like it wasn't too little too late.
Not
basically
good enough.
Like the combination of people not wanting to leave their houses, not tearing them down fast enough, you know. So Tuesday's worse. So casualties, I've just got a list of things. If you happen to know them or you knew them, here they are. Ludgate Hall burns down. The Old Bailey burns down. Fleet Street, I guess all of it.
Heard that.
And the Guildhall. Guildhall's interesting because that's where the city's records were kept in a crypt with massive stone walls. And what's actually interesting of that is that the records survived the fire. Oh, wow. And this same crypt, holding these records, would survive German bombing in the 1940s. So whoever built that crypt deserves a raise.
High marks.
Yeah. And with some interest over these last number of years. So now at some point, it doesn't really say who came up with this idea, but they're like, what if we blow it up? The fire.
What if we blow it up?
So what they start proposing that they start blowing up houses to create fire breaks, because like tearing them down is not fast enough. So
that
what
was
if we
one
blow
of my
them
questions.
up? Yeah.
How fast can you tear?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think of like demolition. It's like weeks.
Yeah. Like here, I've got the door frame out. That took me an hour.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
No, exactly. So now they're like, what if we just blow them up? So actually, but interestingly, they started doing that, and that's pretty much what saved the Tower of London. Is that they blew up a bunch of houses, created a fire break, and stopped the fire from getting to the Tower of London.
Fight fire with fire.
Right? So maybe if he had started throwing gasoline onto it, it might. No?
He was onto something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, Old St. Paul's Cathedral catches on fire.
Shoot.
So maybe this sounds familiar to you, but this church is unburnable. Nobody's ever said that in history. This thing is unsinkable.
Right.
This could never happen because it's built out of stone with like a lead roof and stuff. What could possibly happen? Wow. But there was recently a wooden patch installed on the roof.
Okay.
And that's how they get you.
Oh, jeez.
That little bit of wood. So it catches fire and it's spread to the beams and basically gutted the church. Which unfortunately we recently saw with Notre Dame.
Well, yeah.
It's essentially, it's not the same because they were doing renos there, but like same kind of thing. It caught on fire and then just like gutted the church.
Gutted the church. All that's left is the non-wood
basically
elements.
Yeah.
Facade.
So the flames, stoked by the strong wind, heated the stones to the point where they exploded like grenades.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And the lead roof melted and dripped into the church like fiery rain.
Oh.
Yeah, I told you it was 666.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Like that's a disaster, but kind of metal.
Kind of metal. You could picture Satan in that church cackling. Yeah. While molten lead drips around him.
Yeah. So, and there was a little bit of, I'm not sure, this is a nice image, so I put it in, but apparently, according to Pepys, the flames were so bright, a schoolboy could read by their light over a mile away of this one church burning. Okay. Which is like, maybe. Sure, Pepys.
It's a nice image.
Just like your road 5
I get what you're saying. They were bright.
Yeah. It was a bit bright. Yeah. So Old St. Paul's took with it the Church of Saint Faith, which you're talking about names like
Saint Faith.
That's a bit lazy. But,
yeah.
okay. Among the contents though of Saint Faith, there's about 200,000 pounds worth of rare valuables, including the third folio of Shakespeare's plays. And I meant to look up what's in that folio, but suffice it to say, a lot of Shakespeare's writing
that's a bummer.
Went up in flames.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I mean, all this stuff's a bummer.
Yeah.
But the humanity, but
yeah,
the historical. Yeah. Well, what would turn out to be historical buildings and it just being ruined. That's like, ugh.
Exactly. Right.
Sad,
like it's
man.
There exactly. Like obviously sadder things happened throughout this fire, and it kind of happened again with Notre Dame. Like
yeah, it doesn't compare to the loss of life, but just in a taking a step back, the historical repercussions, it's a bummer.
Oh, totally.
Like Shakespeare's original
which
manuscripts. Ugh.
Which I mean, at the time, I feel bad for not looking up when Shakespeare was alive, so I'm not sure how old they would have been at this point. But I think at the time they're fairly contemporary.
I feel like he was around in the 1600s, but I could be way off.
I'm not going to say it definitively because someone's going to be like. Actually.
Yeah, someone is screaming at their device right now.
Maybe it's the equivalent of like if there was a massive fire and we lost all of Hunter Thompson's original manuscripts kind of thing. Where at the time it's like, but maybe like 800 years from now it'd be like, no!
Like,
you know what I mean?
Are you kidding?
So, yeah. So throughout all of this though, what I thought was kind of interesting is that King Charles II was there like helping fight the fires.
Okay.
Throwing buckets and whatever else. Hey. So I thought this might be a nice place to do our second sidebar, or maybe third if you count the sidebar within a sidebar last time.
Sidebars all around.
Yeah, so I think this time you've got some stuff to talk about King Charles.
So I'm taking the lead on this sidebar. Peter gave me a little bit of homework. And I said, hey, Peter, in a message. Yeah. Which king am I supposed to? And he said, King Charles the First.
Yeah.
So I did, and then a half hour later, I was like, oh, sorry, it's the second. But it's good in a way, because knowing about his dad
yep.
it gives good information about how he came into his crown. So just real quick, King Charles I was viewed as a tyrant. He believed in the divine right of kings, which essentially says that kings are above the law.
Okay.
And whatever they do is as a result of what God tells you to do.
Right. Good thing that kind of thinking died out. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're way beyond that. So he was eventually executed for treason.
Okay.
In 1649 at the climax of the English Civil War.
Okay.
So now we come to King Charles II.
Right.
He was proclaimed king by the Commonwealth of Scotland immediately following his father's death. However, since Charles I did such a abysmal job at kinging,
right.
England had decided they were done with the monarchy.
Okay.
So it turned out to be briefly, but they entered into a period known as the English Commonwealth, and the country was led by Oliver Cromwell.
Oh, yeah.
And his lame-ass Puritans. So Cromwell defeated Charles II at the Battle of Worcester in 1651. That essentially ended Charles II's reign as King of Scotland.
Okay.
Charles II spent the next 9 years in exile in France, the Dutch Republic, and the Spanish Netherlands. So you've got about a decade or so of England, Ireland, Scotland under the English, what do I call it? The Commonwealth.
Okay.
Under Oliver Cromwell.
Okay.
Following his death in 1658, there was a political crisis, which resulted in the restoration of the monarchy.
Okay, so it was really short-lived.
Didn't go so well.
Okay.
At which point, Charles II was invited to return to Britain, where he was received with much acclaim, and on his 30th birthday, he was coronated with all legal documents dated as if he succeeded his father 10 years ago.
We'll just backdate it. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
That reminds me a little bit of, was it Pericles in Athens? They like kick him out, and they're like, no,
we need you.
Can you come back?
Can you come back? So I've got a bunch of points here about just the nature of his reign. I don't think it's too... A lot of it is religious in nature. They're all very touchy about their subsets of Catholicism and Christianity. So it's sort of like the Anglicans versus the Protestants and all that stuff. Like I have one act here is called the 5 Mile Act, which prohibited expelled non-conforming clergymen from coming within 5 miles of a parish from which they had been banished. So real exciting stuff like that.
Right.
Get into it.
But really cracking the whip on. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. But ultimately, he was one of the most popular and beloved kings of England. He was known as the Merry Monarch.
Okay.
Which is a reference to the liveliness and hedonism of his court.
Okay.
Love to know. I don't know the details of that.
Yeah,
maybe
look that
means, up. Maybe it means rich meals in calorie, or maybe something a little more Caligula-esque.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But also there was a general relief felt from the return of the monarchy after the decade of the stupid fart face Puritans. Theaters were reopening. There was more comedy. Coming into like theatrical and whatever, you know, just in society and stuff. And
that's interesting. I wonder if that's also like a phenomenon of being more comfortable with what you know. Because if it was only about a decade, right? Yeah. So these are like the same generation of people.
Exactly.
Like they go through this Commonwealth, and you're like, this isn't better.
This sucks. This is boring.
Yeah. Let's go back to what we know.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go back to fun.
Yeah.
Which back then I don't know what that would be.
Sure. Rich meals and theaters.
Yeah. And if you're the best you could hope for was a nice bowl of smallpox for breakfast, and maybe a theater reopening was make your millennium.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's Charles II.
Okay, cool. So, and I guess he also cared for his city because, like I said, he was like right there. You know how they set up those like brigades of people? Like he would travel between these different outposts and help put the fire out.
Okay.
So like he wasn't just sitting back.
No,
he was like actively involved.
Involved. I mean, he was in battles and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, he wasn't a sideline guy.
Awesome.
There you go.
That was super interesting. Thanks.
No, thank you.
End sidebar. So finally, the fire starts to flame out.
Okay.
So the winds that have been stoking it the whole time. So this whole time, I think we mentioned it, but like there's winds the whole time that are like helping
Wind is
the
a
fire
huge
along.
factor.
Yeah, it's like pushing the fire along.
Right.
So they finally died down on Tuesday evening, and the fire began to burn itself out on Wednesday. When it was over, 80% of London was in ashes.
Oh my.
Look at a map of London right now. It's probably grown since this time, but like imagine if you want to kind of see what that effect would be on modern scales. Imagine 80% of that burnt, essentially from the center, like gone. 90% of the houses were destroyed, leaving between 100 and 200,000 people homeless. Countless, obviously, parishes, official buildings, guild halls. Basically, the infrastructure was gutted.
Right.
Like this fire messed London up.
Yeah.
That shocking death toll that I told you about.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
6
Oh, 6
people.
Not too bad.
6 people.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
I thought you were 100,000.
Nope. 6 people.
6?
Yeah. So I guess all of that joking we made about people like waiting to the last minute, like didn't really.
No, that's what I thought. They waited the last minute and they walked away.
Basically.
Stupid fire.
Yeah. Essentially. Chicken
down the
ashes.
road,
They're like, yeah.
Goddamn fire.
Basically. So like 6 people.
Well,
so
one we know of with a maid who
the maid
was like,
and 5 others.
I can't jump.
I imagine it was like similar like that. Maybe some people like in their bed that never woke up.
Exactly.
So to be fair, like likely following this, there's probably like starvation and disease because like you basically just burnt a city to the ground.
Right.
Now, and let's not forget those those water wheels burnt down. So now like you can't get water back in. Sanitation is
You're starting from scratch.
basically
Worse than scratch.
so. And to add insult to injury, and we'll talk about this in the future, a certain plague had just ravaged London in 1665. So this is 66, and then 65, we had a plague.
Did this plague have a particular color that was
maybe it did, maybe it didn't.
associated with?
Maybe you should keep listening.
Maybe we'll get into that.
Maybe Pepis
some
was
other
there
day.
too. Maybe Pepis was helping out with that too.
Pepis.
You never know.
Okay.
So at the time, England.
That was before the fire?
That was 1665.
Okay.
Fire was 66.
Oh.
So
already a bit.
yeah. So London was like softened up, and the fire like really
On
gave
the
it to her.
downswing.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeez.
So during this time, England was at war with France and Holland. So you had rampant rumors of the French or Dutch causing this fire. There was lots of savage assaults on foreigners, like in the wake of the fire, obviously. There's one here. There's one crazed Frenchman. So he was a Frenchman. He confessed to the fire. And even though they proved that like there was no way he could have, like he was probably out of the country or something, they still dragged him away and hung him. Just because people were so
people
pissed
need
off.
something.
Yeah, right? This is coming, man, there's so many connections, and I love that these are all coming together, but you think back to the plague of Athens, and like people are dying of a plague, and they're like, you know what? Fuck you, Pericles. And he's like, what did I do? I was off fighting the Spartans.
I was in a boat.
Right? Yeah. So it's the same kind of thing. It's just like, this was probably an accident, but I'm going to hang this French guy who I know didn't do it.
Right.
Anyway.
Got to give the people what they want.
Basically. So as a nice little epilogue here.
Okay.
And this is something that I had to read twice. The city smoldered until March of 1667. So like there were still warm embers.
That
like a
sounds
year
about
later.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, why not?
I'm hoping we captured, like, I guess we focused a lot on like the personal level. I hope we captured like just how surrounded by fire London was, right?
Yeah.
Like we picked a few small events, but like London was a fireball throughout this whole thing. Right. And so it's going to take a while for that to cool down.
Yeah.
So, but you know, there's some silver linings. They rebuilt using brick and stone.
Good thinking.
King Charles II is like, God damn right. he gets one of the biggest I told you so's in history, right? Did you guys use brick and stone?
Folded arms, foot tapping.
Yeah. Why would we use brick and stone? That's dumb.
That's a lot of work.
Year later.
King.
Yeah,
Your Grace.
We use brick and stone.
Use brick and stone.
Just picture him so angry about this.
There's a portrait of that.
So it resulted in the founding of the fire company. So they offered fire insurance, and they maintained fire engines and a force of uniformed firefighters for anybody that had this insurance. But eventually, I imagine, expanded to just be like the fire brigade.
Yeah. If you're on fire,
yeah.
give insurance. Well, no. Bye.
Sorry.
Get that insurance.
I'm going to use these metal buckets somewhere else.
That's usually what it takes. Some sort of catastrophe. To,
like we talked about last time. Like I imagine a lot of flight regulations came out of a horrible bomber hitting the Empire State Building.
Like,
so
we should get on this.
Now it's like, actually build out of brick and stone and maybe have people ready to fight this fire. Yeah, that'll help. So the symbol of the fire company, and I thought this was a nice place to end the story portion, is a phoenix rising from the ashes.
Poetic.
Yeah. So London comes out better for it, I guess.
In the long run.
In the long run. Yeah. Not so good during it. And like 6 deaths during the fire. That
not so bad.
That was ridiculous. I had to I'm going to admit that I went off book to double check that one. 6.
I would too.
Like, did you miss a couple zeros?
This book has a misprint.
Yeah. So that's the fire of London. And I cannot wait to hear what music it made you listen to.
Well, when you mentioned it, immediately my first thought was, I said it earlier, Fight Fire with Fire, my Metallica. That's so easy. So forget it. That's not it. So I was thinking I wanted something sad and atmospheric. I'm thinking more of the aftermath than the during.
Gotcha.
So I went with an artist. She goes by the name Grouper. Her real name is Liz Harris. I'm pretty sure she's from Portland, Oregon. She does sort of lo-fi ambient music, typically guitar or piano driven. So the song I went with, it's called Dragging the Streets.
Okay.
And it's from an album called AIA Dream Loss.
Okay.
And it starts off with sort of, it sounds like a field recording of just the outside. I don't know, it's just like wind and so immediately that kind of gives it a sense of like you're just standing in the middle of this horrible, like everything's gone. And it's a really like you can't, I don't know what this song's about, and like I'm not a huge fan of lyrics. I mean, I like what I like, but it doesn't make a huge difference to me as long as they're not terrible.
Right, gotcha.
But in this case, and with most of our stuff, you can't hear what they are. Like everything is drenched in reverb and delay. Yeah. So it's more of a feeling, and to me, like this song just sounds like everything, like we've lost everything. Right. It's sad, it's atmospheric, it's slow, mournful, and it just said, I just picture like just standing in the middle of just complete oblivion. It's like, we lost everything. Yeah. So that's the song I went with.
Nice.
Over to you.
So I went, and you might have heard me talk about this guy before. It's an artist called Romantic, all caps.
No.
I'm sure maybe I've sent him to you before, but I send you a lot of music. So.
Okay. Slip through the cracks, maybe.
So I actually couldn't find that much information about the artist himself. I do know it's a him, but himself. Okay. So he's from Hudson, New York. It's about a 2-hour drive from New York City, 2 hours north.
Okay.
Not sure what his name is, but it's hip hop black metal.
Okay.
So the song I picked was called 6 Gray Mirrors from an album called Autumn/Nil from 2015. And the reason I picked it, actually, funny, I think I visualized my song pick as taking place more during the fire.
Okay.
But the one that I picked has this gothic sort of choir sample, which to me evoked the era a little bit.
Right.
But then he's got like these black metal vocals.
Okay.
And that I thought was kind of like it felt to me like the underlying feeling of sort of the dark relentlessness of the fire. Like the vocals are almost like gutting the serenity of the choir over top of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you have this like serene, and it's got a awesome like hip hop beat as well.
Okay.
So like you have this beat, this choir that's kind of evoking one feeling, and then you have these black metal vocals underneath. And I'm kind of the same as you. Like I think lyrics every now and then like I'll pick up a lyric that I like, but for the most part it's like the vocal part of a song.
Yeah.
That's the most important part, not necessarily what the words are.
Right. Especially stuff like that. Like you're not meant to understand.
No, exactly. Like a band like Deaf Heaven, right? Doesn't matter what Sunbather's about.
No.
Right.
To me.
Yeah, like it maybe like it adds to it. I did read these lyrics, and the lyrics themselves don't really necessarily add to like why I picked it, but I thought it was a really cool kind of image. Like I can totally listen to this song and picture like the fire gutting London essentially. So that was my pick, and you probably heard both of those picks as we were talking about them.
Yep.
So next time we're going to be getting wet in the Pacific Rim.
Oh.
I told you we'd be talking about tsunamis. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's next time. So thanks for joining us. If you like what you hear, I recommend that you check us out on iTunes and give us a little 5-star review. That'll help us spread the word and have more people listen. And looking forward to telling you about more disasters.
You betcha.